Hello and welcome back to this episode of Five Alarm Task Force. If you're watching the video, and if you're listening to the audio, welcome. We're happy to have you. I'm Steve Green, your host. Happy to be here with you and happy to have you here with us. And my guest today is a returning guest. He's been on twice before, once on his own podcast and once on a great roundtable that we did. And this is Chief Anthony Correia from New Jersey. He is really one of those people that I don't think we see a great deal anymore, especially in smaller communities and smaller states, who really grab the bull by the horns for safety, for helping out, especially now in our retention recruitment, especially in volunteer departments. But we still need to retain and recruit career firefighters as well. And so the whole concept, NWUI fighters also. So all of this is going to be part of what we're going to talk about today with the chief on character, attitude, and values. We have some other great news that he's going to bring up as well. But Chief, how about just giving us and our viewers and listeners just a little bio background on you, please?
So, Steve, first of all, it is a pleasure to be back and continue doing the great work that you're doing and getting the fire service educated to all that they should be paying attention, aware of to make the fire service better. I've been involved in fire and emergency services for 46 years now. I went up through the ranks in fire and EMS, went from New Jersey out to Missouri, became a fire chief out there, came back and came to New Jersey, was the director of a small as we would say, a three-station combination fire department. And as of January 1, I'm now technically retired anyway in the pension system purposes for 10 years now as of January 2023. There's a whole lot to fill in between there. Completed the executive fire officer program. Just quickly on that, if I did not get the letter from Chuck Burkell that said that you're out of the executive fire officer program, I wouldn't have done my rewrite and got done. So I thank Chuck for that. So I stay involved. I still ride the truck. I was just out on an alarm system the other night. I'm involved with the tech rescue in our fire department. I haven't ridden as a medic lately, but I'm still teaching in the EMS world. And I'm involved heavily with the Burlington County Fire Chiefs Association with a couple committees. I am the treasurer of the New Jersey Fire and EMS Institute, which we just got up and running again, thanks to Chief Dennis Rubin. And I am now the president of the New Jersey State Fire Chiefs Association, along with teaching and doing a couple other things. So I'm keeping busy, keeping my hands on. My goal now is, with the positions I'm in, is to provide information to the fire service that can help new and young officers and existing officers to have the information they need to be better at leading organizations. Because we talk about character, attitude, and values, it really is going to start from the leadership of how they recruit, how they interview, how they onboard, and how they continue to develop their firefighters and emergency services personnel in their organization. And whether it's career and volunteer, it's not really that much different of what the characteristics. And quite frankly, a lot of this comes from a lot of other industries and the science that's out there that says, this is what we do to build healthy cultures in our organization. This is what we do to help build great character in our fire and emergency services teams.
Okay, so with that said, and since you have nothing else to do, you're able to spend a little time with us today. And I know one of the other things, folks, I want to mention, so I don't forget it, we just talked about before we went on the air, is if you follow the chief on Twitter at T Correia, spelled Correia, he takes some of the most beautiful shots of nature that he's not traveling all over the world to do this. He does it basically in his own backyard. And I've seen,
I got that one there.
I've seen summer, spring, fall, and winter. And if you ever need that, you're sitting in your office, you're sitting in the firehouse, whatever it is, and you just need a little pick me up and fresh breath, look for some of his posts with some of those pictures, because I'll tell you, it's nice to just take a breath of nature and put aside all the stress and all the troubles just for a minute or two, just to look at that and say, man, that is beautiful. I think, didn't you post not too long ago a picture with a couple of otters? Was that your picture?
No, I didn't have way back. We had beavers right out here, but the town moved them out. I got a raccoon out there that I catch up with occasionally out there. The turtles, me and the turtles, we're all hanging out together. But that's my stress release too. And getting on that little green boat on Fridays or Saturdays, doing a live on the lake, helps reduce the stress and try to put some positive energy in my brain.
That's great.
None of us is perfect, so we all have our areas that we can do better in, and so trying to go out there and refresh and open my mind and try to just be a little bit better person every day is a great thing. Everybody should find that type of environment.
Exactly. We should all emulate that. So we'll start off with, as you mentioned, with character, and character is going to play a great role in both career and volunteer combination, WUI, because we need to find that good path where we have good people, strong people, qualified people who are willing to both stay with us. So that's our retention side, but we have to recruit. And an important part of both those sides is the character of the person, the guy or gal who wants to come in or is interested, or maybe they're already there. And they're good people, but maybe there's something in the character. So why don't you address that, please, Chief?
Sure. So I in the fire service, we highlight, and I want to make sure I clarify, so we highlight hose lines, halogens, and hearse tools in the tactical end, and that it's extremely important, whether it is learning how to advance a hose line, how to VES through a window or extrication of a car, or how to properly do CPR. Extremely important. And I was just discussing this with the EMT class in Forsyth County, Georgia, the other day via Zoom, is that's not what we do most of the time. So to have the right character for 100% of the job, and when I say job, means career or volunteer. So for 100% of the job, the right character is, what do you do on those service calls when Mrs. Jones calls at 3:00 in the morning because she has stomach pain, but she's really lonely. That's why she calls 5 times a week. Or the alarm system goes off in the middle of the night and you go unbothered again by it, but you didn't realize it's also an educational opportunity to learn about. You're in J.C. Penney. Where is the alarm system? How does it work? Where are the heads? And understanding. So where is Zone 1 in J.C. Penney or a warehouse? So it's above and beyond just going out and doing good tactical stuff. And we're a service organization, whether we provide fire only or whether we provide fire EMS. And that's our and we provide all kinds of service. And Chief Alan Brunacini, way back in his day, was way ahead of the curve with customer service. And a lot of us what's this? But it didn't take him long to sell us on why it's important. So I guess I'm digging deeper into what it takes to provide that customer service that Chief Brunacini has always espoused, and maybe has gotten forgotten a little bit. Maybe we got to push that book out there again. So I wrote an article, Character, Attitude, and Values Before Hose Lines, Halogens, and Hearse. We'll actually have a class to go with that too. That was published in one of the fire journals, which I'll be glad to share with you. And what I looked at and in my own experience in fire and EMS and career and volunteer, is I used to be the guy to go, oh, you got firefighter 1 and 2, you got extrication training, and you're an EMT. Oh, come join our organization. That started with the volunteer, and the same thing with the career. But then I found out some of these were the most destructive people in your organization. And over the years, I found out how critically important, as well as researching what other industries do for recruitment and retaining personnel. And it's all about character, attitude, and values. It's all about understanding emotional intelligence. And so I've got involved recently with a group of people, both in the United States and Canada, that's looking at some stuff that's being done in Canada with character-based leadership that was started. There's multiple people, but the guy that really that we've been led to is Steve Virgin, who's done some incredible stuff with that. And so character, attitude, and values really always go together, because your character is going to transmit to what kind of attitude, behavior you present in your organization. And values are, what are those core values you have in you, and does that are they aligned with the core values of your organization? But moreover, does your organization's core values align with what your community expectations are? So all that stuff connects, and I postulate to everybody that we need to be looking for character first. And as I talked to Chief Dave LeBlanc of Harwich when we were writing the article a couple of years back, is like, we could teach a monkey to be firefighter, and I think he might be a better firefighter because he's not going to argue. Firefighter's going to go, what do you mean? I'm not going in the back door. I always go in the front door. I'm not VES in that window. I'm going to go that window, you know. The monkey's going to go, you tell me to go in the front door, I'm going in the front door. He's going to do what he's asked to do. So understand the human component is critically important, is the most important step, because most people can be taught tactics. Most people can be taught strategy. But character, some of it's innate, and we need to put that in, starting with our recruitment. A lot of the recruitment, right? Come fight fires. They show big flames and cutting people out of extrication. But there's nothing to talk about service. And I found, and I've been out looking for this when I went to Firehouse Expo and other places, I'm starting to see the departments like Montgomery County, Maryland, and Fairfax, Virginia, Memphis, Tennessee, where they're actually looking for the right character. Phoenix is another one, looking for the right character. And there's volunteer organizations too. When you put out there, and this happened to me in my own experience, that look, going to join the fire department, you're going to fight fires, you're going to do extrication, and then you find but that's like once every month, once, twice a month, unless you're a really, really busy company. And I run to alarm systems, and I go to dumpster systems, and I go to cars leaking fuel. But you sent me to fire school, and all they taught me about was emergencies. I went to EMT school. They only taught me about saving life. They didn't teach me about compassion and holding Mrs. Smith, 93 years old, hand in the middle of the night. So I took the long discussion on that explanation, because there's a lot into character. And I don't believe the majority of fire departments and fire service leaders pay attention to that fact and work on building character, attitude, and values before Hoselines, Halligans, and Hurstville. And by the way, that course had several different names, and I changed it to make sure that it had something fire tactical related, so people would want to pay attention to it.
Right.
The fire service, I see a lot of stuff about blue collar firemen. I got it. You're hands on, tactical, get dirty. I do that. Look, I was at a structure fire, an apartment fire a month or so ago, maybe 2 months. And, mine's going a little bit as you get older, but I understand that. But if you look at that, I used to be a carpenter. I used to do framing carpenter, and I wasn't in the union, but I went to the trade school, and they taught you physics, they taught you chemistry, they taught you English, they taught you how to read a ruler, how to draw schematics. Same thing happens with plumbing. The same thing happens with electricians. The point is, we need to be more educated. But the difference between the carpenters and the plumbers and the electricians, they're usually not having that interaction with people. So if we interact with people 80, 90% of the time, what are we doing to help our people develop those skills? But again, it starts with when we're recruiting to tell them that's what the expectations, that's what we're looking for. And yes, occasionally you get to fight a fire, do an extrication, have a cardiac arrest save, which is a great part. But as I was telling the kids the other day on the Zoom with Foresight EMT class, is, you know, the whole job, when you get to appreciate how much you did for Mrs. Smith at 3 o'clock in the morning, holding her hand when she had stomach pain, you're going to appreciate that you have much more to give than just the tactical blue collar work that everybody's pushing out these days. And I'm not diminishing it, but we're putting way too much emphasis just on the tactical and the physical ends of the job that we do.
Right. And, you know, thankfully, several years ago, we followed our cancer initiative for firefighters with a behavioral health initiative, which is absolutely necessary. I mean, you know, you and I both go back to a long time ago. We were both in the fire service in the 70s, when it was real wood that was burning. You know,
How much that long ago, Steve, was it?
Yeah, years ago. But the fact is that one of the things that my chief at this first volunteer department that I was in outside of Greensboro, was that there's more to be a firefighter, being a firefighter, than pulling a hose, squirting water on a fire, and using a pry bar or a Halligan tool. He said it's the person inside you that counts. That's what it's all about. And my buddy and I, he was 18, I was 25. We happened to meet at this fire department by accident when we were both being voted in, found out we were both Jewish. And he's still my best friend today, all these years later. But we took those words. Yeah, I am very lucky to have him still as a friend all these years later. And we took the chief's words and said to each other, we're going to be the best that we can be. We won't be perfect. We're going to make mistakes, but we're going to try to be the best firefighters and I was an EMT. He became that we can be, and provide the best service. Now this is 77, and you know, Firehouse is just coming out magazine, and I'm reading this guy, Chief Alan Brunacini from Phoenix, talking about this Mrs. Smith. And when I finished reading it in the lounge, I gave it to Rich and I said, hey, take a look at this, by this chief, look at this article, because he's talking about what Chief Wilson talked with us about at that meeting when we got voted in, about who we need to be. And we've kept that in mind all these years. He went into law enforcement, been very successful as a helicopter pilot for a couple of agencies. And I believe that if we can pass this kind of knowledge on, not just how to tie knots, not just how to use this machine, but pass on the knowledge that we gained by being humanistic firefighters, caring about the people that we do, it's going to always make us better in anything else that we do. This past Monday morning, now ever since I got injured in 85 and I couldn't be active in the fire service anymore, I've still kept a full BLS pack in my car. Never been without it. And I've stopped at well over 200 emergency scenes. I just happened to be there, whatever the case was. Monday was one of them, coming out of a parking lot. The woman in front of me blew a stop sign. She got T-boned by a woman who couldn't stop. I stopped, threw on my lights, grabbed my bag, my vest, came out, assessed both victims, and I spent time with the victim who was more severely injured. calming her down, getting vitals, getting ready for when EMS showed up. I called in the 911 call. And again, telling them that I'm a former firefighter, EMT/medic in those days, made the dispatcher the call taker feel more comfortable that I knew what I was saying, because I gave him the level of damage, my quick assessment of the two patients who needed primary care first, etc. And when, and we took care of them until EMS came, and I gave them the bullet on her and left the care over to them. But for me, it's someone would say, well, why would you even bother to do that? And my answer was, how could I not do that? If I have the knowledge and the background and I see somebody hurting in front of me, how do I not reach out? Forget being a firefighter, forget being an EMT or a paramedic. How do I don't reach out as a human being to see, are you okay? Are you all right? Can I help you? And that's part of character, I believe. And a lot of the guys that I knew back then had that, no matter what part of life they were in, whether they were very wealthy or they were just, blue collar workers. And we had a couple of guys even below that, but they always were passionate to take and help the people in our fire districts. And to me, I think that over the years, and there've been a lot of years, a lot of it's been lost. And I think what you're saying is so important that we need to either resurrect it or remember to bring it up, because it has to be an integral part that we look for in the people we're going to bring in and the people that we're looking to keep with us as well.
So I agree with you wholeheartedly. And one of the things is, when we started, many of us started, even in the small career fire departments, you came from the community that you worked in, that you volunteered in. So you had a connection to it. So you had some caring interest in it. I, like you, was lucky to have an outstanding first chief, George T. Evans, who will forever be my guidepost, guiding light of leadership and how to be a leader. And his son, George, we're still friends and in communication on a regular basis. That value of providing service again is what is not being promoted at every level. It's about the tactical end, how to be better at putting your gloves on and put your mask on with your gloves on, all important stuff. But before you do that, understand that you're a service organization and you serve people in a wide breadth of ways, and you don't know how you may positively impact them that you didn't think you did. And they come back later and say, thank you for helping me put that smoke detector in, or thanks when you came in for the alarm system, you noticed that my mother's house had trip hazards and she's 87 years old and you didn't want her to break a hip. That's what we're missing. So, and if it takes the leadership and whoever the recruiting people are to talk about the humanistic end of what we do, and ask them, so why are you joining the fire department? To save lives. Well, what the answer should be, to save lives. Guess what? You get a chance in our department to save lives maybe 4 times a month. Truly save lives. Now, I've been in EMS been a paramedic for 42 years, and I can count, probably fingers and toes, maybe a few more, but truly life-saving, stuck a lot of IVs in people and give meds, but it wasn't, make them better wasn't going to save their life. So besides saving lives, why are you joining the fire department? I guarantee you there are going to be a lot of them going, Now, last night at our Burlington County Fire Chiefs meeting, we had Sheldon Yellen, who owns Balfour Industries. If you don't know who Balfour is, look him up. They're one of the largest recovery cleanup companies in the world. I think Sheldon said they're in 31 countries. And one of the things that Sheldon pointed out, because we had just given our award, we give an award every year to the student in Firefighter 1 who gets the highest grade. And he looked over at that young man and he said, that's the future. And what I see, what these kids are looking for is purpose. And so I got Sheldon at the end of the night as he's on his way out. I said, Sheldon, look, I took your words down. And I think what we need to be promoting at every level, from recruitment to interviewing to recruit class to mentoring and on through, is purposeful service. What is the purposeful service that you are providing to your community? What is it? What is the purposeful service? I fight fires. Well, what do you do between fighting a fire once a month? And by the way, there are places that do more than that. But a friend of mine's son who was in the Bronx said, look, I'm based on the way I'm on shift, even where I'm at in Bronx, and he's moved on since then, I get about one fire a month because of the way the shifts go, maybe two. So here's somebody who works in some of the busiest areas, seeing as maybe 12, 24, maybe 36 working fires a year, all hands fires. So what I say to everybody, what kind of purposeful service are you going to give in between? How are you going to make an impact in your community? How are you going to, when you go to those government leaders, show return on investment for the money? And I don't care if you're career or volunteer anymore. It's a business to run the fire department. It's not cheap. Engines are going for $600,000. Ladder trucks are at $2 million. A turnout gear at the cheapest end without SCBA is you're probably paying $1,500-$1,600. SCBA or $4,000 or $5,000 per radios, $6,000 to $10,000. So if you're going to run that service, what purposeful service are you providing that you should be given all that equipment, be given the support and the financial ability to do that, but also within your own heart, talking about stress and mental health? What will help fulfill you in providing, being part of the fire service? What is it going to fulfill you when you're not fighting fire, when you're not doing an extrication, when you're not doing a cardiac arrest? And I subject to you that a lot of stress happens in people is not just a critical incidents, but when there's a mismatch in the job. And again, job is career volunteer. There's a mismatch in your expectations of what you expect a job to be and what it really is. That causes, it actually causes real mental stress. And so if you start aligning early, both, and this is where the leadership really can make a difference, because if you help these young people, most of them are young coming in, align their purposeful service, and that's a new term I'm going to throw out there a lot lately. So thanks, Sheldon. Thanks, Balfour. But help them find that purposeful service. And it's above and beyond hose lines, Halligans, and Hurstles. And listen, I love picking up a Halligan. The apartment fire last month, got to use Halligan to pop a door, went on the hose line. The only thing I didn't use was a Hurst tool in an apartment building. So, still love doing that stuff, but that's far and few between. I also love whenever I can help Mrs. Smith feel a little bit better, whatever her emergency may be. And that's a stress I used to feel as a medic. You train me as an EMT to save lives, as a paramedic to save lives. And now I got to go to Mrs. Smith at 3:00 in the morning because she's lonely and she calls for chest pain or shortness of breath or anxiety. And I get frustrated and aggravated. And then I take it out on my coworkers. I go home and take it out on my family. I become disgruntled with life in general. So it's critically important to develop that character, attitude, and values through defining purposeful service that is realistic in your community. And every community is a little bit different. So your community needs to do a community assessment of what purposeful service. Ask your community of what they think purposeful service is. And again, I think you could probably go back to Chief Brunacini's book on customer service and probably find 80-90% of the answers there.
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt. And I think I have two friends who have been on the podcast, Nick Peppard and Sean Duffy, and From their appearance here, they came up with their own podcast that we kind of launched through Five Alarm Task Force called Make Do. And what it's set up for is because 80% of us, whether you're career or volunteer, 80% of us serve in suburban locales, basically. That's what we take care of. Mixed use, but suburban locales. Most of us are not in the inner city doing it. And so with that 80%, we don't necessarily have the resources as an automatic unless you have mutual aid already set up or things like that. But you could get toned out at 2:30 in the morning, and you might be the first engine. You might be the only apparatus that gets there for the next 7 minutes. And you're not just going to sit there and say, well, I can't do anything else because we're the only ones here. There are only 3 of us. No, you're going to do what you got to do to get the ball rolling for that call. And I think it's important that we realize that part of that preparation, and because of that the fact that we're not living in the urban environment, the suburban environment gives us the opportunity to have more interaction with the people that we serve. And that's what we do. We do protect them, but we serve them as well. They pay. If it's a career department, they're paying. And if you're a volunteer department, your people are paying a part of what you need because through their taxing for the fire district, perhaps that way. There are many ways that that volunteer departments are financially supported to a certain level. But the fact is that those opportunities are there right in front of us in smaller communities. And you and I talked about states like Mass and Jersey and Delaware and Maryland, these smaller states that have are really, you see a difference there because you do have smaller communities that good fire and EMS protection, and you see these people not just when they call you, but you bump into them at the grocery store. You bump into them at the mall. Oh, hi. Oh, how's your son doing? How's that arm that we bandaged up for him a couple of weeks ago? You have no idea how far a little comment like that, what it does for you and your department when you can say that to a citizen that you felt you just bump into them. And what you're saying is so important because if you're going to look to get more volunteers, you have to dangle some bait. And it can't just be, we put out fires and we do extrications, as you mentioned. You have to dangle the right carrot in front of the right horse. But you have to also teach them if they join, that has to be part of what their learning experience is going to be. It can't just be hose lines, Halligans, and Hearsts. It has to be, what is it to serve a community? That's what you're coming to do. Oh, yes, we handle the fire or the EMS side, but we are serving the community. That's our role. So I think what you're saying is absolutely on the spot.
So let's go there a little bit. Whether it's recruitment or retention, we're now on Generation Z. Funny thing is, people are still talking about the millennials. Millennials are 40s, right? The millennials are chiefs now. They are officers. So, we have people in the Gen X and some of us as boomers still left that are not paying attention to who's coming in. And I believe it's a two-part process. And I think the military does this really good with their recruitment. Is one, we have to set our expectations and standards. But two, as you said, we also need to do some research and find out what gets these Generation Kid Zs, what entices them, what motivates them, what inspires them. And, as Sheldon said last night, it's purpose, so take it a step. It's purposeful service. If you can sell them that they're providing purposeful service and that they have engagement in making a difference in the community. And with all the political rancor going on these days, to tell somebody, look, you get to come into an organization that, we don't care about your ethnic background, your political background, and we're going to provide service to the community. When you go out to the community, you deal with everybody's different ethnic, political, racial backgrounds. You get to get away from all that by being part of the fire and emergency services family. But it takes doing a little research. My good friends Taggart Schmittendorf and Candace McDonald, I do a lot and talk with them a lot, and they're people that are paying attention to the kids. And Tiger, even though he works for a fancy company now, he's still riding the truck. He's still in there talking to the kids, engaging. And, I was at our fire company meeting the other night, and the young kids, I'm trying to make sure that I'm recognizing, paying attention, but, setting the role model, but also trying to, hey, what is it that brings you here? What is it inspire you to come here? However, with that said, career volunteer, by the way, I belong to the New Jersey Career Fire Chiefs Association, and I hear at every meeting how hard it is to get people on the civil service list and to get the firefighters on the career end. So it's not just a volunteer issue anymore. But we shouldn't be recruiting everybody. Not everybody fits for fire and EMS. It's just like some people are better at being plumbers. Some people are better at being carpenters. Some people are better at being engineers, right? We need to make sure they understand this is what the job is. It's not like it happened a lot in the past. Come on, join. Come on. We hang out at the bar together. We have fun together. We play softball together. So fire department should be a natural extension. That's not true. We need to be recruiting the right people that fit. And if you're setting that bar and you're explaining to them, this is not all type A, blue collar work. A lot of this has to do with emotions and compassion and interactions with people and having a high level. And I'm going to use this term a couple of times because it surprises me how many in a fire service, especially leadership, don't know what it is emotional intelligence. If you're not understanding what emotional intelligence is and how that impacts your organization, your people, both from your own personal level as well as interacting with others, then you're not really understanding how to, one, get the right people, how to influence and motivate them to be good, good fire EMS personnel, good service-oriented personnel.
It's interesting how you put that. When I joined that department down the street from our apartment in North Carolina, I didn't even go there to join. I went there just to happened to stop by. I used to visit all the firehouses in the greater Boston area, and I went by going to the store, and I see this brick building with the doors up, and I see nice red shiny trucks inside. So I stop in and look around, and the captain comes out and says hello, and next thing I know, I get to meet the chief, and he gives me an envelope with an application in it. And I was trying to realize and think, what was I thinking when I went in there? Number one, I did know it was a volunteer department at the time. I just wanted to see the apparatus like I had done many times before at other places. But when I got the invite to join in the application, I first was thinking about red lights, sirens, stuff like that. And so I had a follow-up meeting with the chief because I was a college graduate, and they had not had a college graduate in that department at that point in time. And we sat down and talked. And he talked about character and what he expected of his firefighters. And that maybe 10, 15 minutes that we spent together changed my whole approach to what I saw myself doing as a volunteer in this company, because I had already planned to go into the clergy. Something went a sway there, and it didn't happen. But I was there working in Jewish education, and I realized that everything I was trying to teach from my position as the director of the religious school with my teachers and the students is what the chief was teaching me and those 10, 15 minutes, that my job in the fire service as a volunteer was not just answering calls and putting out fires, stuff like that, but had to help with fundraisers. And I have to take care of people. He says, because if we can't take care of the people, then we're not doing our job. And if we don't do our job, we're not going to get our money from the state and the county. And that's it. We're going to be done. And that had such a powerful effect on me that I knew that more than anything else, I really wanted to be a volunteer in that department, because I was going to learn about being a better person at the same time as being a firefighter and learning how to fight fires and do rescues. And I think that perhaps, and I'm not going to put any labels on generations, because we all came from various generations with or without various abilities. I knew how to use average tools, screwdrivers, hammers, drills, stuff like that, but I couldn't change the spark plugs on my car back in those days. I didn't know how to do it or set the timing. But the mentor that I wound up having at this department, not only was he a great teacher for fire skills and things like that, but he also took the time to show me little things like that, like how to take care of my own car. Well, I don't have to pay $60 to a garage when he can show me how to put in my spark plugs, set the timing, etc. And he became a dear friend, and he's also a dear friend still today. And I think that, again, one of the things we sometimes overlook is that person in the firehouse who might be the elder statesperson of the department, might be the longest one there, maybe retirement's not too far off, whatever the case is, but they've seen in their term, they've seen lots of things. Besides the action, they've had and seen lots of interpersonal goings on. And they knew what was good, and they knew what wasn't good. And they always stress to us in our meetings that, remember, we're there to help the people. We're not there to help our egos. Because this fire department is not about egos. It's about helping our community.
Absolutely. So you brought up a few good points there. And, in the service to the community, a few years ago, my current department, there's a young gentleman, Dominic, and he was battling a brain cancer. So I'm not sure who set it up, but we went over to his house. His whole family was there. We had the police, we had the fire department, and we had all these people dressed as superheroes like Batman and Superman and all. You see those guys? You know what? Dominic gyrated to the fire department. We let a couple cops hang out because a couple of them are firefighters. We didn't want to hurt their ego, but that's right. Where he was. So we developed a relationship with him that on one of our engines, it has the cancer ribbon, and it's the Dominator. He's on the truck. His family is one of our biggest supporters, and they don't even live in the area. We had our Christmas, and we had our Christmas party back in December. Him and his family showed up. And it's these type of things that when that gets into your soul, that's every bit as good as, pulling somebody out of a fire and resuscitating them.
Absolutely.
Because you're really making a positive difference and a role model. So when I teach classes, character, attitude, and values, and a couple others, my original company I started with, Rustling Hose, which I'm still involved with, even though we don't provide firefighting services anymore. There is a picture from the 1940s, 1950s. I got to get it clarified again. I know some of the people on the truck. There's a little kid looking, and we see the picture from the back. The firefighters are sitting on the truck. It's a 1940s era truck, but you can't even see his face, but you can just see the way he's looking up at those firefighters, the incredible the incredible vision that he's having, that the awe that he's having of these firefighters, how he's inspired by them. When we can do that, you talk about any time in a kid's life, always there's some discussion about when I was a kid, I wanted to be a firefighter. I bet you 80% of the kids from grade kindergarten to 4 said I wanted to be a firefighter at some time. Why is that? Because we are looked at in such a positive role model, not just for saving lives, but because we're human people that connect with them and we're there to serve them whenever in their time of need. Heck, we used to go out, and some places still do, for the cats in the tree. Although you got to follow Steve Martin's role in that movie he did, with just put a can of cat food at the bottom of the tree. Right? That's the difference between that blue collar extending into a little bit of knowledge and education part. But I wanted to go on to talk about there are other things that you can do in the fire department, like we did with Dominic, that will leave lasting impact on you as well as them. The mentoring, mentoring was unofficial back in the day, still is. We know a lot more, and good mentors make or break good firefighters. And we really would benefit in the fire service if we start paying much more attention to what mentoring is, how to properly use it. The International Society of Fire Service Instructors, we developed a mentoring peer-to-peer program. The state fire chiefs, we're working on doing that now. The National Association of EMTs has also done that. We talk a lot about mentoring, but you really should learn about what mentoring is and what that engagement is. And again, as you get on in your career, instead of becoming disgruntled because of everything, and maybe things aren't working out for you, but you can change that for one of the newer members. And that's going to give you, while you're waiting for that cardiac arrest or that working fire, that can give you satisfaction that you've helped make somebody not just a better firefighter, but just a better person, right? With the junior firefighters, I don't know exact number, but probably 30, 40, 50%, depending on your locale, are not going to stay with you much after they're 18. But why can't we just make them better people? If they're going on to be a nurse, a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer, why can't we just, in that 3 to 4 years of mentoring and building their interpersonal skills, their human skills, their emotional intelligence, just make them better people instead of making them better tactical firefighters?
That's so important.
So again, I won't dismiss any of the tactical. It's extremely important, but we need to really meld it out and get the right balance. And also, as we explained, and I think it's worth saying over and over again, is to make sure that they understand and remind them that most of the times the way you can provide service is not pulling somebody out of a third floor window or cutting them out of a car overturned on an embankment.
Right. All right, folks, we're going to take a break here, and then we're going to come back with Chief Correia. And if you're watching the video, you will not see anything change on the video. If you're listening to the audio, well, you know that we're going to take a little break, and you'll hear a few good words and public service announcements for our brothers and sisters in the fire service, and really for our listeners as well. And then we'll be right back with our guest, Chief Anthony Correia, right after these words. As always, please stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to this episode of Five Alarm Task Force. My guest, and I'm happy to have him back, is Chief Anthony Correia from the great state of New Jersey. I guess I didn't live too far away when I was living up in Livingston and working in Caldwell. I really loved it up there. It was, I don't know, it was a little different than being in suburban Boston, and it was a little bit warmer than when I lived in Syracuse, New York for 4 years. But thanks to this wonderful podcast, I've been able to have the opportunity to meet so many great brothers and sisters in the fire service. And interesting, I just find that when we're talking together, like you and I are, that we see that humanistic discussion. We talk about it. And it seems that for the people that I've been with, at least my guests, that they're as interested in that part of the fire service as they are in the, hoses, Halligans, and Hurst tools, because they might be. I've had some of the younger guys on, but I've had most of them are maybe 5 years and up of experience, up to chiefs, and each of them have all somehow in the discussion we always come up with that humanistic part of who we are, because we can't forget that. Because if we forget it in the fire service, there's every chance we're going to forget it in our lives as well. And we know what happens when that occurs. So let's get to the next level as we're talking about this. We talked about character. We talked about attitude. So let's talk about values and what you see as important and what you like to teach when you're teaching these classes.
So the values, right? So back in, I don't know, the 90s or somewhere about then, I started getting education about mission, vision, and values, and organizational core values. And there are some cool words that people write down on what do they mean. So I've spent quite a bit of time in the last 10, 15 years paying attention to what values and core values organizations provide, but also no personal core values, and we'll tie that all together. An organization's core values are those core services, that core, the core beliefs that they have that's important to provide to their community. So things like service, compassion, honor, integrity, those type of things, and you need to get down to the essence of like what service is, what compassion is, and how does that impact your community? How does being compassionate make a difference in your community as a fire and emergency service provider? How does integrity make a difference in your organization? How does honor and honor and honorable is an interesting thing, because to be honorable is to be and we'll talk about it on the personal values too, is to be recognized at a higher level, to be honored for having integrity, to be an ethical, to being responsible, all the things we're going to talk about in personal values. So when you use those terms, what do they really mean? What do they really mean in the provision of service to your community? And then what do they mean in your fire department as your interactions, your daily interactions of your core values? You should not take them lightly. So in an EMS agency, I had worked for part-time 12 years. One day I was in the chief's office. Chief was a good guy, former Philly fire medic, retired, took this job, did a good job. But in his office, as I'm leaving, and I look, and there is the organization's core values, mission, vision, and values. And I'm going like, Chief, why is this sitting here? He goes, Tony, that was here like way before me. And we just haven't got to it. Mission, vision, values, and core values of your organization need to be developed by everybody, including your community. If you're going to provide a service, you got to know what they want. Do they want you just to save lives, or do they want you to prevent fires, prevent emergencies? What are they looking for? So every organization has core values. We have them, whether they're explicit or implicit. Our actions will tell you what we value. If we value being macho, being arrogant, being selective in the services that we'll provide to our community, it shows. Well, I suspect any of us could spend probably a few days with any organization, and they don't have to have any written core values. We'll be able to figure them out. We'll be able to figure them out Is it disharmony? Are their values that they have distrust in each other? That they're what was the word? That they're not happy, unhappy. You'll find that out. So your core values should not be something that takes a little bit of time. You need to study your community. What kind of service are you going to provide? What are the core values that you go back on? And there's a book, by the way, by the name of Tribal Leadership, where the authors reviewed over 36 different types of organizations, nonprofits, hospitals, a pharmaceutical company, all kinds of different organizations. And they interviewed over 26,000 people, I think, employees. And there's stages of 5 stages of tribe. Stage 1 is an anarchist. Stage 5 is like Jimmy Carter and Habitat for Humanity. Stage 4 and Stage 5 tribes are best tribes you can have. By the way, that's only 24% of all organizations they interviewed. Isn't that sad? That only 24% of the organizations, parts of the organizations had Stage 4, Stage 5 tribes. And without getting into all of the detail, the key that I want to get into, what was most important for these successful Stage 4 and Stage 5 tribes was to be aligned on core values for a noble cause. So your noble cause is your mission, your task at hand, your project that you're working on, your program. To be aligned on the core values that when the group lost their way, they would go back on their core values. That was honor, it was integrity, it was teamwork, whatever it was, that they used them to go back and refocus and to continue to be successful. I don't believe most fire departments pay that much attention, one, to them, and two, use them in daily. So there's a Father Boyle. He runs Homeboy Industries in LA. I got turned on to him from a classmate who sent me his book, Barking at the Choir. He deals with all these gang members, people in prison, gang members. He gives them meaningful jobs in their bakery and Homeboy Industry. Every day, somebody in Homeboy Industries goes out into the warehouse floor and recites their mission statement. What do you think it would be like if every day, every platoon, every engine company, ladder company, every EMS agency had to review their core values and what it meant to them? Well, how much different would it be? I think it would be better. So I want to tie into one last part, and then I'll turn it over to you. We all have individual core values.
Sure.
Do our individual core values align with the organizations? And if not, you have a few choices. One, you can work to align with the organization's core values. You can decide not to and still work there and just accept them. Or 3, and we talked about this about bringing people on, you can decide this is not the organization for you. And when I was in Missouri, we provided EMS. I had 2 members that left us because they didn't want to provide EMS. But they were honest about it. I said, Brad, I hope you find what you want where you're going. God bless you. I wasn't mad, upset with him. But do your core values align with your organizations? So an article I wrote a while back that's on my blog is heart, right? Everybody says in order to be a firefighter, you have to have heart. So with that, I came up with this acronym, and acronyms I know get overused. Are you honorable? Are you ethical? Are you responsible? But we could take that R to make it also, are you respectful? And are you trustworthy? That's heart. And then I added another one. Do you have integrity? So you can change those 5 core values, 6 core values for whatever, but you need to do that self-examination. And again, in the recruitment process, in the interview process, I would ask, what are your core values? What are your core values in life in general? I don't care about the fire or EMS. What are they in general? And then you go, well, I'm the interview. I'm not sure that they align with our organizations. Do you know what our organization's core values are? No. Well, I guess you didn't do your research. And if an organization doesn't have core values to ask their people about, they need to get to work today,
Right,
to develop those core values. And I will tell you, when we did our mission statement in Burlington Township years ago, one of our fire commissioners who worked in industry as a safety consultant in large industries, great guy, Paul Vincent, had been a volunteer firefighter in Pennsylvania. We didn't hold that against him. But his company that he did safety for worked with an organizational psychologist to help them look at the organization from a psychological point of view. And so we brought him in, and it took us 6 months to create our mission statement. But it was an engaged process. If you want people to believe in your core values, they have to have some skin in the game. They have to be connected and engaged to that. So I wanted to give you my connection of what core values for an organization should look like and why, what it looks on a personal end, and how they have to mesh.
I think it's so important. When I was working in my field, I would often because of my status in our national organization, I was asked to do board training when a new board was elected to the synagogue, and do board training. And I did a good number of those. And it was there that I had been naive going into it a little bit. I obtained my certification from our organization that everything was necessary. But I always thought that most of the people, the congregants, felt the same way I did. But when I started doing the board training, and I had my problem with members of the various boards of the synagogues where I worked. But when I was doing the board training, and I brought this up, the concept of, do you care about what your position is going to do as a board member? You can't just be a member of the board and a member of the synagogue, but you have to, if you're a board member, we usually request or require you to take on a committee, whether you're a chair or a member of the committee, but you should help service the synagogue. And I had, in several of the synagogues, I had people say, no, I'm not here to do that. I'm just here to help make the decisions for the synagogue. So
everybody wants to be in charge.
Right. So I said, and I didn't want to embarrass them, publicly, but I'd said, so after I'd gone around and spoken with each of the members in the little 3-minute things that I set up, I said, it's interesting to see how many of you are here to serve the members of our congregation. And that's what's important. But there are also some of you who are here to serve your own agendas and say that you've been elected to this board. But a board of directors is ineffective if each and every director does not come forward to take on a task for the organization, because that shows why we've picked you to be one of the leaders of the congregation. And the first time I was taken aback by it. I wasn't prepared for it. But after that, I was ready to take a couple of arrows and sling them back and turn them around in a polite way, so that I could teach them that there's more to the position than just having your name on the stationery. You have to give back. And I'm not talking about money. I said, you got to give something back to the congregation in leadership. You're a leader of the congregation. This is where you want to be. You want to sit at this table of the board. You must play an active role in the congregation to deserve that position. And if you don't do it, doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that you might not be a good fit for the board of directors. That's all. And, well, not dare you. We're all human, and we all have needs, wants, and desires. But we have to remember that these people who are members are the ones who are paying for this congregation to function. If we start having mass exodus due to I don't like that leadership. They don't even care about us. I had a problem with my family and I had a medical emergency. I couldn't pay my dues that month. And they said, if I don't pay the dues that month, they're going to let me go. What kind of leadership was that? And I said, you're absolutely right. That's not leadership. That's ego. And we have to remember that there's a big difference, especially in the fire service and in EMS and in law enforcement. We cannot let ego go first. Ego should be the last in the train, should be the caboose. Service, compassion, care, dedication should be those traits that we exude when we're in touch with people. Whether it's back in the synagogue, it's back in what we do today, back in the fire service, EMS, law enforcement. Those traits are what need to rise to the top and be the very best of the cream in that cup by being right at the top. And that way, because people will see when you show those characteristics that you're a caring person, and they'll be willing to trust you, answer you, let you help them, whatever, guide them, whatever the case is, because you're showing that you're a human first and you're in this position second. And that, I think, is a core value that has kind of been lost a little bit in the fire service. I can't speak for law enforcement. I can't speak a lot about EMS anymore, but in the fire service, I think that's a trait that we need to encourage stronger participation in.
I agree. And I belong to the Rotary, and the Rotary has 4 tenets, but the thing it says is above anything is service before self.
Right.
And if you want to feed your ego, take care of others. You know, there's tons of evidence and information and feedback that when we help others, it makes us feel better about ourselves, and it reduces stress levels. It truly does. One of the best things you can do is when you're stressful is to be able to help somebody else. It helps reduce stress. So if you want to feed your ego, serve others first, and it will do it. But this is a nice segue. I was thinking about you discussing it. So another article I wrote was about the oath. I think the oath is taken way too lightly. People write oaths that do not correlate with what the service they have. So if we took our mission, vision, values, our core values, our organizational expectations that we gave you when we first went and recruited you, and then when we interviewed you, we had you sign off on these are our expectations for you to perform if you join our organization. And you take all that together and you write an oath that is specific to your organization position. And Holly Broughton in Tennessee actually showed this to her chief, and they actually took and they wrote an oath for firefighter, an oath for deputy chief, and an oath for the chief of the department. Your oath should be specific to your organization and your position. And what I subject that they all do is give the oath to a new firefighter, a new officer, you're being promoted. What does this oath mean to you? Write down, tell me in a paragraph, what does this oath mean to you? And then review it with, that next person up to see if you are connected. So when you really take that oath, that you really are putting skin in the game, that you really mean what you say when it comes to bringing your core values in line with the organization's core values. And the oath, I saw it given last night, and I'm not saying that we didn't do a great job at the chief's organization level, but I don't believe the oath is something we go through. It's just a position, and then we see elected leaders, fire service leaders. Just saw 2 fire chiefs, one in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, get busted for inappropriate contact with junior members. Obviously, people did not get their oath, right, and did not live by their oath. And I think same with that congregation. Your oath to your congregation is, do you understand that? And if it's not service to others first, like you said, either you need to change your perspective or, maybe McDonald's wants you on their board of directors. I don't know, but it's not just board of directors. We don't take everybody.
Right. Right. And I think we're, especially today, I think departments are afraid to turn somebody away because, well, we need help. We need more people. But you just can't hire anybody because they say, I want the job.
Cancer starts from one cell.
Right. That's a great way of putting it. What that first cell that mutates wreaks is what begins the wreaking of havoc on our bodies. Right. And that's a great way of looking at it. And, you and I both grew up, I'm sure, with our parents telling us, one bad apple spoils the barrel. And, when you're 6 years old, 7 years old, doesn't mean jack to you. But as an adult, yeah. And when you get involved in interpersonal actions as an adult, when in your career or your vocation or avocation, you learn how quickly that holds true. Is that one bad apple can spoil. And I think it might have been Chief Rubin who once said to me that, you can't be so hungry that you'll take anybody off the street to be in your department. You have to have that gut feeling as the chief that this is going to be the right person for you after you've, spoken with them and done the interview and looked at the other stuff. But I think we need to add to that, as you said, we have to look at the humanistic value of that applicant or that person who wants to be a volunteer. They could be a great person. And, we had a guy, I remember in that first department, really nice young man, voted in the same night that we were. And a couple of months later, I found myself running to a house fire on the engine. He was in the other seat. And I was told to pull the nozzle, and he was going to pull the lines and straighten them out, and then he would back me up. We get to the fire. I pull the nozzle. He pulls the lines. Knocked the fire down. The captain's right next to me, guiding me on this fire. We knocked the fire down. He says, "Okay, you got it out. We'll do the mop up. Take a break." And I said, "Oh," I looked behind me to thank the guy who had been in the other seat, and he wasn't there. It was somebody different. So I said to the captain, "What happened to so and so?" He says, "Oh, go talk to the chief." So I got really concerned. So I went to the chief. He says, "Stephen, you did a really good job. That was your first knock. You did really well. Listen to captain nicely. Nice job." And I said, "Thank you, chief. But what happened to, what's his name? He was in the jump seat with me and he was going to pull the lines." He goes, "He wasn't comfortable going into that fire because it was a pretty hot fire." And I said, "You're not going to kick him out of the department, are you?" He goes, "Absolutely not. We'll have him. He's going to serve." He came to me and told me, and we're going to have him serve on the fire ground in other manners. He'll pull ladders and help with that and stuff like that. And I walked away first almost totally surprised by his answer, and then realizing from that interview that it's more than just fighting fire. It's being a person to another person. And this is a young man who wanted to volunteer and help his community. And the chief saw that. He just wasn't going to be one cut out to make entry on a fire. And he taught me that lesson, that it wasn't a membership that was at stake. It was, did he feel safe enough to do it? And if not, I'm the chief. I have to find something else that he can do so he can remain a dedicated member of our department. I can't remember the last time I saw that same attitude, but that's what care is.
And talking about keeping, not taking everybody and getting the right people. And first of all, the other old adage is that you spend 80% of the time on 20% of the people.
Right.
So taking that time in the front end and looking for the right people and training them properly and mentoring them properly is critically important. But years ago, my volunteer EMS agency was in dire straits. And we had to come to the understanding and realization that we could not provide service And we were responsible because we had career personnel during the day. We were responsible for service from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday and 24 hours Saturday and Sunday. So we went to the other two volunteer agencies and said, this is all we can do. You guys are pretty good. Can you pick it up for right now? And we'll put on crews when we can. And with that, we were able to build back because we didn't have to take everybody that we didn't. We built the character of the organization. We built the culture of the organization that within 6 months we were back up and running. And we have bought new uniforms, new coveralls, new turnout gear. So not only did we build them inside, but we gave them a new image, new uniforms, the whole thing. It was a volunteer organization. And we were very successful for quite a while until other things got in the way. But the point is that we had to step back of just taking everybody going down the street and, like, here's an application, fill it out now, we're going to take you. And that we got the right people. So, going after the right people, keeping the right people, utilizing that character, attitude, and values. And the values part is critically important. And also understanding, that gentleman not going into the fire was not a tactical issue. It was an emotional issue.
Right.
It was a personal issue, and that chief keeping him on was not about trying to correct the tactics. It was about trying to help the person. So my point is, a lot of times go, well, if you do tactics, if you train on tactics all the time the right way, things will go well. Tactical issues usually are not from poor tactics. It's usually from people's attitudes and how they act out in their behaviors. Well, like I said before, I'm not taking that hose line through the front door. We were always taught to go through the back door. I'm not VES in that window. That's not the way we do it. We're going inside and up through the steps. It's people's attitudes that usually cause problems. When you look at issues in line of duty deaths and injuries, a lot of time it's issues with freelancing and that's not a tactical issue. Freelancing is people that their attitude and behavior is driving their action. So if we're not correcting character, attitude, and values in the beginning, we're not giving them clear expectations of what we want for character, attitudes in the beginning and continuing that all the way through their career or volunteer, then we're going to have problems, and don't be surprised why it happens. And when you go and you have those investigations that come in, don't be surprised why they happen. Because we didn't hold them to that higher interpersonal standard, that higher human standard, that higher emotional intelligence standard.
Right. Our mutual friend, we already mentioned him, Chief Rubin, I remember one of the times he was on, showed me the poster that he would hang up in the firehouse for everybody to see, and I believe in the bays, which was his rules. I think it was, Rube's rules. And they were both, they had a mix of humanistic values and what he expected duty values as well. And the fact that he was able to mix them together, I think proved that there are leaders out here in our fire service who really do care about the quality of each person they bring in. And I don't mean quality monetarily. We're talking about what is their inner core like, and will they be a good fit for this job that we do? Because, we have those moments of terror and excitement, but those are few and far between today. Most of our calls are not dramatic.
Calls for service.
They're calls for service, exactly. And whether it's a broken down vehicle with a family stuck by the side of the road, or it could be like you said, Mrs. Smith in her home, she's making believe she has chest pains or a stomach problem because she's lonely. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. She can't sleep. She has nobody else. And she calls us. That, does it wake us up from a decent sleep? Maybe. But is it part of who we are or who we're supposed to be? Absolutely. You can't.
So
Good.
I'm going to say, let's take this to, we've been talking about like how a lot of this had the interaction in the community, but all of this character, attitude, and values is how we interact every day with our fellow firefighters and fellow emergency services personnel.
Right.
And that's where we spend most of the time, right? At the firehouse, whether it's career or volunteer. And if you're a career, sometimes 33% of your life is spent with your coworkers. So if you are disgruntled, dismayed, you have a bad attitude, it's going to rub off on your employee, your coworkers. It's going to stress it. It's going to stress your relationship. It's going to stress trust that people have in you. It's going to stress working relationship and willingness to work together. So this is critically important, not with just the service to the community, but your day in and day out interactions in your organization, and you're paying attention. So apparatus might not get checked, SCBA, AEDs might not get checked because people have a poor attitude, that things might get forgotten because you're stressed out, because they're upset working with this constant complainer every day. So and we don't have nearly enough time today, but the point is, pay attention. Clearly, the character, attitude, and values has everything to do with your daily interaction. You can have the greatest SOPs in the world and the policies to work by, but if the people don't believe in them, the people don't believe in themselves, that the people don't show the right character, attitude, and values day in and day out. So I came in, I had a bad day. I had a fight with my wife or the dogs, right, Augie? That's Augie, the German Shepherd's over there. Didn't play ball enough with Augie. He didn't like it. He bit me in the butt, Came in with a bad attitude. If you have a good team, they're going to go, look, you're kind of annoying, right? Why don't you just go over, have a cup of coffee, go relax. Maybe you want to go to the gym and work out. But when your attitude gets better, then come talk. And, if I got that type of reception because I got a good relationship, as opposed to, here you are, you're annoying again. We're going to be out here in the engine bay. You go do whatever you want to do in the kitchen. And if we have to go on a call together, we'll do it and we'll tolerate you. So it's two different pictures based on character, attitude, and values. So my good friend Ed Kensler, who's now who's a fire chief, is a training specialist, National Fire Academy, told me a story of when he was working as a fire inspector, and the chief, Steve Schooley, who just retired, and he looked quite comfortable in it last night. Ed's complaining, moaning, groaning about everything. And obviously this had been going on for a while because Steve said, Ed, you don't like it, just quit. Ed said, whoa, I was floored. But it gave him the perspective at this time that, look, he controls his attitude. He controls his behavior, and his values and what's important to him is going to drive and motivate him to properly develop his character and his attitude and his behavior. So, that day-to-day interaction everything is predicated on character, attitude, and values. I don't care if the guy comes into work every day on time, does all his chores the way he's supposed to, if he's got a poor attitude, if he's complaining, he's moaning, if he, fights about everything, that he's negative, doesn't smile, that's going to impact guy or gal, it's going to impact the crews. So, finding a way that every day that you're working to develop the culture to try to make the workplace fun. I see these Ukrainian soldiers on TikTok doing fun little things. They're in the middle of the war. They don't know if they're going to live in the next 30 minutes, but they're finding ways to make being a soldier as critical as the job is, having fun time together. So creating that culture that people want to belong to, that people want to come to, because we talk about that recruitment and retention. In the early days, when I joined the volunteer fire department a couple of years after, we would go places and people go, I was thinking about joining. We'd have some guys go, well, why do you want to come there? Why do you want to join us? That sucks. You don't want to come here. Well, we got a terrible attitude. You got to create that environment and culture every day through character, attitude, and values and teamwork, and utilizing tools like I'll get back to it. Wow, just
right.
Lost it. But anyway,
Welcome to my world.
Right. Getting to build that culture does not come by osmosis, doesn't come by easy. That takes leaders at every level, and not just leaders in the sense that you're a lieutenant captain, battalion, or a chief, but I'm talking about senior men, people that have been on the job 2-3 years, creating that environment that we want to work together, that we want to find that, like a family, we're going to have times when we fuss, fight, and holler, but in general, we want to have more happy times and more good energy and positive work environment, that we're going to work on developing character, attitude, and values all the time, and see if we're living by them. And that's a quick test. Look, if our core values say something about that we're supposed to be respectful, well, when we're moaning to each other or crying and complaining, is that being respectful? To be honorable, is that being honorable by complaining about everything? So the point that values is not just about, and yes, it has a lot to do about providing service to the community and engaging with whoever our stakeholders are, whether government leaders, community leaders, or whoever they are, business leaders. It's about how we interact with each other each day. And the stronger that our culture is, the less stress we have. I will tell you, my stress levels did not come mostly from those critical incidents. It came working in dysfunctional organizations and working for poor leaders. So the way we fix it is create that right character, that create environment and culture through character, attitude, and values.
Right. Well,
and it might involve tactics, because we train, we
Exactly.
work together, we train together, but it's to build teamwork more than it is to, and I shouldn't say it that way, but it's just as much about teamwork as it is about building tactical competency.
Right. Because let's be honest, there's very little that we do that's singular. Just one firefighter or one EMT, one paramedic does. In this business, we have to be part of a team. It could be 2, it could be 5, but we have to be part of a team and be willing to work with each other, no matter, like you said before, it has nothing to do with our political or our ethical or ethnic, anything like that. It only deals with the job that we have in front of us, the job we've taken an oath to do. We have to work together. We have to find a way to work together to do that job. It doesn't mean we're going to fall in love with each other and get married. It just means we have to be able to work together to serve the community. That's what's important. And make sure that what those actions are in support of our department and not anything that would embarrass or cause problems for the department as well, because we need to remember that. And as you mentioned about the couple of chiefs that recently were in the news for not so good, and there was another volunteer chief last week who admitted to setting a few structure fires to keep his firefighters interested volunteers interested. So he set some fires. It's a terrible example to set. And because it's coming from the top, it's a bad example. It makes every chief look bad, even though this was just one person in this particular case. But again, while what he felt was the need for retention was done in an absolutely incorrect and immoral way.
So think about it this way. What was the culture of that organization that they felt the only way to retain members was to go to structure fires? They created that culture when they recruited. They created that culture when they interviewed, when they sent them to training and continued on in the organization. It's all about fighting fires. And quite frankly, I see a lot of that on TikTok these days that really, really annoys me, along with talking about lights and sirens. Haven't done a research paper on it. Lights and sirens, both in fire and EMS, are overrated. So for those who don't like that, I'm sorry. If that causes you emotional distress, I'll be willing to give you a virtual hug. But the reality is, if we're a service organization and we count on predominantly providing whatever type of services through our values that our community agrees are valuable to them, then we're going to be less likely to need to have that working fire to stimulate our ego and make us feel good about being in emergency services. I can tell you that the people that were involved with Dominic and going out and now having his name on the truck, and by the way, they have a minor league team, the Trenton Thunder. They actually went one year, got on, they took the truck there, went with Dominic's family, a bunch of our firefighters. You tell me that's not as emotionally satisfying as going out and fighting a fire, doing those type of things. So I tell you that I suspect that in those organizations there's something going on with the culture, that the way it was developed, the way it was currently at that time, created that environment for him to believe that that was acceptable.
That's well said. Well said, Chief.
I just want to say quickly on all these people that violate our culture. Sure, some of them could be just a lapse of good common sense or lack of character, a short lapse. But I suspect somewhere along the line they believe that it wasn't strengthened enough that what the values of the organization is and what would happen if they violated them. The TV program on Apple TV, Ted Lasso, where he was an American football coach, not very good at it, became a soccer coach in England, and he was hired solely to run the team in the ground so they could sell it, which didn't happen. But he put a simple sign over top of his door that every time you came in, that if you had something, it said believe. And you just hit on top of the sign. Again, I don't care if it's Rube's Rules, Tony's Heart. If you're not having people live those values every day, to live those principles, that there's something that's reinforcing them, the chance for us to slide down the slope increases. So we need to find that way to do that, to have those cheerleaders, to have those processes in place that help us reinforce every day what they are. Whether it's right or wrong, in Catholic schools, they would say a prayer every morning. In public schools, it would be the Pledge of Allegiance, and then maybe a quote. All of them are ways to reinforce certain expectations and behaviors. And the fire service should be doing the same thing, finding a way to reinforce those expectations of being honorable, ethical, accountable, responsible, respectful, trustworthy, and have integrity. We should be doing things to reinforce those every single day. And when things go wrong, is figure out why did they go wrong and how can we use our core values to fix where we went astray.
That's a great way to sum it up, Chief. And thank you very much. This has been a great episode, and the wisdom that you share with us and each time you've been on is so apropos to those of us who continue to serve in the fire service and EMS, and it just is as applicable as to the to law enforcement as well, because we all are taking this oath to serve and protect, and that's what's important. We live by the oath that we take, or we should be living by the oath that we take. So I really want to thank you. This was a great episode, and you bring great wisdom, and your experience, vast experience that you bring to the table, are so valuable to all of us who are listening and learning. You know, that's why when I was sent that email out last week, I always say to my guests, I'm looking forward to learning with you, because every guest teaches me something. As a lifelong teacher, I know when I'm supposed to teach, but I know when I'm supposed to learn as well. And I love, even though I can't serve anymore and haven't been able to for a while, I still love learning and then sharing, as we do with the podcast, learning and sharing what will make us better in what we do as better people, healthier people, better at the tasks we do, whether we're fire, EMS, law enforcement. We want to be the best that we can be. But remember, none of us are perfect. We do make mistakes. That's why the good Lord still lets us put erasers at the end of pencils, because we still make mistakes, because we are human.
I think that's a great way to, as we're segueing into close, is wisdom does not come from being right all the time and reading all the right books. It comes from making mistakes. It comes from doing things that you shouldn't do, and recognizing that and being open to others educating you. You know, I one time I said something when I was in Warrensburg that it wasn't illegal, or wasn't something that, you know, I get in trouble, but it was just inappropriate. It was an unwanted comment that wasn't necessary. And one of the younger members pointed it out. And I said, you know what, Chris, you're absolutely right. I'm sorry. So it's taking those points, learning from you, learning from others, learning from where you make mistakes, how to get better, and not having that attitude or ego. I can't do anything wrong. My word is the only way. You know, every tool, the sharpest tool in every shed, has to still be sharpened on a regular basis.
Right.
So if you want to be able to provide wisdom, if you want to be, and none of us are going to be Alan Brunacini or George T. Evans, but if you want to aspire to those levels, that you always got to utilize sharpening yourself, and always utilize learning that you're going to make mistakes, you're going to do some stupid stuff, and learn from that. But please don't do the really, really stupid stuff that puts you in jail or puts you in a bad limelight, that you know, as you said, not only impacts that person, but impacts the whole fire service.
Right.
So great point. I just wanted to point out the wisdom doesn't come from, you know, just always being the brightest and smartest. I've fallen down. I tell people my wisdom comes from because I've fallen down so many times, or done the stupid things so many times, that I've had tons of great learning experiences.
Right. That's a great way of, and you know what? We can't be afraid to admit that, you know, because like I said, nobody is perfect. You'll never meet anybody who is perfect, but let's always strive to be the best that we can be. That's the way.
Absolutely.
Chief, my sincere thanks for taking time from a busy schedule to join us today and share your wisdom with us. Folks, if you're watching the video, this will be the end of the video broadcast. If you are listening to the audio, well, you know that we're going to be right back right after these words. But again, our thanks to Chief Anthony Correia for joining us today, and we'll be right back right after these words if you're listening to the audio. To those of you on the video, thanks very much for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll have another podcast up very soon. Stay safe and stay well.